The HOA President, Preston Whitmore, said it the day I moved into Magnolia Ridge. He stood at the edge of my driveway, khakis pressed, smile stretched tight enough to crack porcelain. "It's nothing personal," he said, "but people around here work hard to keep this neighborhood presentable." Presentable. That word carried the weight of generations. My name is Jordan Miles, 38, civil engineer, bought my house cash after years of contracts overseas. 2 degrees, 0 debt, and still, the second I moved in, the neighborhood Facebook group lit up like a bonfire. Did anyone else see the new neighbor's car? Who drives a Dodge Challenger with tinted windows in Magnolia Ridge? This isn't that kind of neighborhood. That kind of neighborhood. I'd grown up hearing that phrase in different tones, always meaning the same thing: we don't want people like you here. But I ignored it. I had no interest in drama. The house was my peace offering to myself, a one-story brick fixer-upper with a massive oak tree out front, bought from a retired couple who wanted to move closer to their grandkids. Except, as it turns out, peace has an HOA fee. The first letter came 3 days after I moved in. Violation Notice 1, trash bins visible from street view, $50 fine. Except the bins were behind the fence, the same place the previous owners had kept them for 20 years. Then came Violation 2, mailbox color inconsistent with community standard. It was black, same as my neighbor. By the end of week 2, I had 4 fines, 3 courtesy warnings, and a passive-aggressive note left under my windshield. "We worked hard to make this neighborhood beautiful, please don't ruin it." Signed, Concerned Residents. I knew exactly who wrote it. Preston Whitmore, HOA President, Realtor, founder of Whitmore Realty and Design, and apparently self-appointed guardian of property value. He was a man built entirely from khaki-colored arrogance, part politician, part cult leader. He owned 2 homes in the subdivision, both renovated to the exact shade of eggshell compliance. The first time I saw him, he was trimming his hedges with an electric clipper like he was sculpting the future of Western civilization. He gave me that wide, country club smile and said, "Morning, you must be the new owner." "Yep, Jordan Miles." He squinted as if the name itself didn't quite fit the zip code. "You military?" he asked. "Engineer." He nodded, pretending to approve. "Well, welcome to Magnolia Ridge. We just like to keep things consistent around here. The HOA has guidelines, I'm sure you understand." I understood perfectly. By the end of the month, the fines totaled $1,250. When I asked to appeal, the HOA secretary, a nervous woman named Cheryl, said, "You'll need to attend the board meeting." The meeting was in Preston's garage. And when I arrived, I realized it wasn't a meeting, it was a tribunal. 4 board members sat behind folding tables, sipping bottled water. Preston stood at the center, hands clasped like a pastor about to deliver judgment. He started with a smile. "Jordan, we've had a few concerns: trash placement, exterior color variance, vehicle visibility." "Exterior color variance," I repeated. "Your front door, it's not the approved shade." "It's gray." "Yes," Preston said, "but it's a cool gray. Magnolia Ridge uses warm gray." There was silence, then laughter. Soft, polite HOA laughter, the kind that says we're mocking you but we'll deny it if you call us on it. Preston continued, "We just want to make sure everyone's property values remain intact. People pay good money to live here." I leaned forward. I paid good money too. His smile didn't move, but his eyes hardened. "Yes, but Magnolia Ridge has standards." And there it was, the invisible line drawn in plain sight. After that night, everything changed. My lawn service mysteriously forgot to show up. My mail started arriving torn or opened. HOA inspectors stopped by twice a week, cameras in hand, snapping photos like paparazzi chasing scandal. The whispers spread faster than kudzu. At the grocery store, a woman I'd never met looked at my cart and said, "We don't usually see your type at Magnolia." I wanted to ask what type she meant, but I already knew. It wasn't about the car, it wasn't about the trash bins. It was about me, my skin, my sound, my silence. They weren't protecting property value. They were protecting an illusion. By mid-September, I'd racked up $3,800 in fines and 1 lawsuit threat. That's when I decided to stop playing defense. I spent 2 nights digging through public records. I'd worked with developers before. I knew how these HOAs were structured. Most are tiny dictatorships hiding behind the phrase community association. Turns out Magnolia Ridge HOA wasn't registered properly. Their corporate charter had expired in 2019. That meant every fine they'd issued since then, legally invalid. And guess whose name was on the expired filing? Preston Whitmore. I printed the documents, highlighted everything, and waited. The next HOA meeting was October 5th. I arrived early, parked across from Preston's driveway, and watched him set up his little folding tables again. He wore that same smug grin, oblivious to the fact that his kingdom was already crumbling. When the meeting began, I waited for him to list my infractions: the uncut grass, the unauthorized vehicle, the cool gray door. Then I stood up, calm, controlled, calculated. "Before we continue," I said, "I have something to share." I slid a folder across the table. "Magnolia Ridge HOA State Corporate Registry. Your business license expired 6 years ago. Every fee, every lien, every fine void." Preston blinked. "That's not." "It is," I interrupted. "And unless this board reinstates immediately, every dollar you've collected is subject to refund." Silence. Even Cheryl, the nervous secretary, stopped taking notes. Preston's jaw tightened. "You think you can waltz in here and—" "I don't think, I know, because as of today I've filed a complaint with the State Department of Real Estate. They'll be investigating all HOA actions under your name." For a moment his mask cracked, just a flicker, a glimpse of panic beneath the polish. Then he smiled again. "Mr. Miles, you're making a mistake." "No," I said, "I'm correcting one." The fallout was immediate. Within a week, Preston's emails to residents shifted from smug to desperate. "Please disregard rumors," he wrote. "The HOA remains in good standing." But residents started asking questions. Why were we fined for mailbox colors? Where did our dues actually go? And most importantly, why was Preston depositing HOA payments into his personal account? I didn't have proof yet, but I knew the smell of fraud when I caught it. Then came the retaliation. My car tires were slashed one morning, my driveway eggshelled overnight, and one evening I came home to find the words "Go Back" spray-painted across my garage door. I called the sheriff. They filed a report, took photos, then said the same thing they always do: no witnesses, no lids. But I had a camera. I installed motion sensors, floodlights, and a $60 Amazon camera that uploaded directly to the cloud. 3 nights later at 2:14 a.m. it caught something. A figure in a baseball cap and gloves, holding a can of paint, creeping across my lawn. The face was blurry, but the gait, the posture was unmistakable. "Preston." The next morning I printed the footage and dropped it at the sheriff's office. The deputy's eyes widened. "You sure this is who you think it is?" "I'm sure." By noon, Preston had called an emergency HOA meeting. The agenda: addressing false allegations of harassment. I didn't attend. I didn't have to. Because while Preston was busy scrambling, I was busy buying. Through a friend at the county assessor's office, I learned something explosive. Preston's development company, Whitmore Realty and Design, was behind on 3 property loans. He'd used HOA funds as collateral stabilization in bank paperwork, meaning he'd commingled community money with personal investments. Illegal. Easily traceable. And if he defaulted, those properties went to auction. 3 homes, all within Magnolia Ridge. I didn't tell anyone, not yet. I just waited like a storm cloud on the horizon. By November, his lenders had filed notice, foreclosure pending. The same man who called me property value poison was about to lose half his kingdom. And when that notice hit the county database, I was ready. I wired the deposit the same morning. The day I closed on those 3 properties, I stood in my driveway, staring at the same oak tree that had shaded me since summer. The leaves were gone now, stripped bare, just like Preston's facade. He drove by that afternoon, pretending not to see me. But I waved anyway. "Morning, neighbor," I said. He didn't respond. Maybe because he knew what I knew, that I wasn't just his neighbor anymore. I was his landlord. And that was just the beginning. Owning those 3 houses should have felt like victory. But power doesn't sit quietly, especially not in a place like Magnolia Ridge. For a week the neighborhood was silent. No fines, no letters, no smirks. Preston avoided me completely. It was almost peaceful. Then the storm hit. The first strike came on a Monday morning. I woke up to blue and red lights flashing outside my window. 2 sheriff's cruisers, 1 code enforcement van, and a white Range Rover parked diagonally across my lawn. Preston's Range Rover. I stepped outside, coffee in hand, keeping my voice calm. "Something I can help you with?" The deputy, a tall man named Patterson, said, "We received a report of an unauthorized construction project and hazardous waste dumping on your property." I blinked. Hazardous waste? Preston folded his arms, pretending to look concerned. Jordan, I told you months ago, any exterior modifications need HOA approval. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. There's no HOA, remember, you let it lapse. His face twitched just for a second. We're in the process of reinstating it. Good luck with that, I said. The deputy stepped between us. Sir, can you show me what's in your garage? I let him in, nothing but a tool chest, lawnmower, and boxes from Home Depot. No waste, no construction. He looked around, then sighed. Looks clean to me, I'll file the report as unfounded. Preston tried to protest. Officer, this man's been. But the deputy cut him off. False reports are a misdemeanor, Mr. Whitmore. Maybe stick to your real estate business. For the first time, Preston didn't smile. He just glared, silent, calculating. And I knew this wasn't over. That night my phone buzzed with a notification from Nextdoor, the neighborhood gossip app disguised as community safety. The headline read, "Suspicious man harassing neighbors, please share." Attached was a blurry photo of me mowing my lawn. The post claimed I'd been confrontational, recording families, and creating a hostile environment for children. The author, anonymous, but the writing style was unmistakable. Preston. Within hours the comments piled up. He gives me a bad vibe. I saw him driving slow past the playground. People like that shouldn't live here. The word that hung in the air like poison. By morning, the post had over 200 comments, and 3 neighbors had left notes taped to my door. Please move. You don't belong here. The police are watching you. I tried to stay composed. HOAs thrive on reaction. They want anger because anger proves their narrative. So I documented everything, screenshots, post timestamps, anonymous usernames. Then I called Lydia Chen, the lawyer who'd helped a friend of mine win a property dispute 2 years earlier, a woman with a mind sharp enough to cut glass. She listened quietly as I explained everything. When I finished, she said, Jordan, they're setting up a pattern painting you as aggressive. That way, if you fight back legally, they can claim intimidation. So what do I do? She paused. You hit them where they live. Paperwork, public records, sunshine kills corruption. By Wednesday, I had a file thicker than a phone book. Expired charter, misused HOA funds, photos of Preston vandalizing my property, screenshots of the smear posts. I drove to the county clerk's office and filed formal complaint 8847. Subject, unauthorized operation of defunct HOA, misappropriation of resident dues, defamation of character. The clerk glanced at the folder, whistled low. That's a lot of paper, Mr. Miles. Yeah, I said, and that's just month 1. The next weekend, Magnolia Ridge hosted its fall community picnic. Normally, I would have skipped it, but this time I went camera in pocket, phone recording the whole time. The park was full of families, coolers, and forced smiles. Preston stood by the gazebo, shaking hands like a campaign candidate. When he saw me, his jaw tightened. Jordan, glad you could join us. I'm part of the community, right? I said. Of course, he replied smoothly, just hopping for no unpleasantness today. Oh, I wouldn't dream of it. The crowd buzzed quietly, people stared, whispered. I could feel the tension like static, the outsider standing at the edge of the perfect picture. That's when a woman, tan blazer, clutching her purse like a shield, stepped forward. Excuse me, she said loudly, are you the one suing the HOA? I turned to face her. I'm the one holding it accountable. She frowned. We don't want troublemakers here. My husband says you're bad for property values. And there it was, again, that phrase. Property value, code for keep things white, neat, and quiet. I smiled. Funny thing about property value, I said, it goes up when corruption goes down. Preston's voice cut in, sharp and rehearsed. Jordan, maybe we discuss these matters privately. Sure, I said, pulling out my phone. You want to discuss it now, we can do it on camera. The color drained from his face. He turned away, muttering something about lawyers and paranoia. But the damage was done. Half the crowd had heard me mention corruption. Whispers started, people exchanged looks. By nightfall, 3 homeowners had emailed me privately. One wrote, I thought you were exaggerating, but I checked my HOA dues and the bank account name isn't Magnolia Ridge. It's Whitmore Holdings LLC, what's going on? Another said, we've been overcharged for years, I'm in. The tide was turning. The following week, local journalist Patricia Hughes from Channel 9 Denver called. She received a copy of my complaint through the county's public record system. Mr. Miles, she said, if what you've alleged is true, this could be one of the biggest HOA fraud cases in the state. Then let's tell it right, I said. She scheduled a sit-down interview for November 20th. Preston must have caught wind because 2 days later I found another notice taped to my door. Immediate lien threat, unpaid HOA dues $6,400. It was printed on fake letterhead from Magnolia Ridge Community Enforcement Division. I recognized the formatting. It was Preston's old template. He'd even misspelled enforcement the same way, enforcement. I called Lydia. She laughed so hard I thought she might choke. He's fabricating government documents now. Oh, he's cooked. Can we sue for this? Not yet, she said, but soon. First, let's make sure the court sees what kind of man he really is. 2 nights before the Channel 9 interview, I heard tires crunching on my driveway. I looked through the window. 2 men in suits were walking toward my porch, one tall, one short, both carrying clipboards. When I opened the door, the tall one said, "Mr. Miles, we're investigators with Apex Security, contracted by Magnolia Ridge HOA." "There is no Magnolia Ridge HOA," I said flatly. He smiled thinly. "Maybe you'd like to discuss that inside." "Maybe I'd like you off my property." The short one stepped closer. "We just need a statement for our records. You've been accused of harassment and racial intimidation toward board members." I froze. "Excuse me." The tall man continued, "It's a serious allegation, sir. We'd like to resolve this quietly before it escalates." That's when I noticed the GoPro clipped to his lapel. They were filming me, trying to bait me into anger. I forced a calm smile. "I'm recording too," I said, tapping my phone screen. "Now, unless you have a warrant, this conversation is over." Their faces dropped. The short one muttered something under his breath and they left. I stood there, pulse pounding, camera still rolling. By the next morning, a new post hit Nextdoor. HOA President and investigators threatened by aggressive homeowner. Video evidence forthcoming. But this time I was ready. I uploaded my own clip first, unedited, full context. The video blew up. Within 24 hours, it had 12,000 views locally. And the comments? They weren't on Preston's side anymore. "This man's just living his life. Whitmore's lost it. This is harassment." The tide had turned, not quietly this time, but loud and public. When Patricia and her cameraman arrived 2 days later, Preston's carefully manicured illusion of control was collapsing. We filmed in my living room. The same oak tree framed the window behind me. Patricia asked about the fines, the vandalism, the fake notices. I told her everything calmly, factually, with receipts. She listened, nodding, then asked one final question. "Jordan, what do you want from all this?" I smiled slightly. Accountability and maybe a little poetic justice. The segment aired that Friday evening. Local HOA President under investigation for fraud and harassment, the headline read. Footage of Preston's Range Rover, my video clip, and the county filings played in sequence. Patricia's closing line sealed it. "It seems Magnolia Ridge may soon be under new ownership, and this time the rules might finally be fair." By Saturday, Preston's phone must have melted. Because Sunday morning, a moving truck showed up at his house. His wife, immaculate blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, directed workers as they carried out boxes. Preston wasn't home. Rumor said he was traveling for business. But I'd seen the foreclosure notice. Business was over. That night I stood in my driveway, watching the Range Rover disappear down the street. For the first time in months, the air felt light. I thought that was the end of it. But Monday morning, a certified letter arrived from Lydia. Subject: Property Transfer Opportunity, Magnolia Ridge Holdings Auction Notice. Inside was a single page from the county assessor's office. Preston's remaining real estate, 6 homes, 1 undeveloped lot, was going to public auction in 14 days. And the starting bid? Less than half their market value. I felt something deep in my chest, not joy exactly, but satisfaction. They'd called me property value poison. But now I was about to own the entire neighborhood's cure. It was funny, the same people who once whispered behind their shutters were now sneaking glances when I walked past. Some smiled nervously, pretending they never joined Preston's hate parade. Others avoided eye contact altogether, clutching their mailboxes like confession booths. The Channel 9 segment had changed everything. For the first time, Magnolia Ridge wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a headline. And I wasn't the villain anymore. I was the man who stood up to the HOA and didn't blink. But behind that calm smile, I was already 3 moves ahead. Because Lydia's letter about the auction wasn't just an opportunity, it was checkmate in progress. The auction was set for December 2nd, held at the county courthouse. 6 homes, 1 undeveloped corner lot. All once owned by Whitmore Realty and Design. All now collateral from Preston's failed loans. I wasn't the only one eyeing them. Developers, investors, even a few residents looking for deals were planning to attend, but none of them knew what I knew. I knew the full story, how Preston had illegally used HOA funds to secure those properties. That meant once they sold, every dollar from the sale would be subject to state audit and restitution claims. And that's where my strategy began. 2 days before the auction, I sat across from Lydia at her office, a minimalist glass box overlooking downtown Denver. She had a file open, filled with county filings, bank documents, and my purchase history. She adjusted her glasses. "Jordan, if we buy these properties under your name, Preston's lawyers will scream conflict of interest. They'll claim it's harassment or revenge." I nodded, which is why I'm not buying them as Jordan Miles. She arched a brow, then who? I slid a paper across the desk, the Articles of Incorporation for Oakline Development LLC. Registered a week ago, owned by my sister Alyssa Miles, a teacher from Boulder with zero connection to Magnolia Ridge. I grinned, let them chase ghosts. Lydia laughed softly, "You really thought this through." "Preston taught me to." The morning of the auction, the courthouse steps buzzed with murmurs. Reporters, realtors, even a few residents from Magnolia Ridge trying to act casual. And then, like clockwork, he arrived. Preston. Gone was the polished realtor suit. He wore a navy windbreaker and a forced smile, his skin pale against the December air. His eyes found me instantly, narrowing like he'd seen a ghost. "Here to watch me lose, Mr. Miles," he said through clenched teeth. "Here to observe due process," I said. He leaned in slightly, his voice low. "You think this ends with your little TV stunt? You think people will ever forget what you are?" I met his glare. "They don't have to forget, they just have to remember what you did." The clerk called the first property 214 Magnolia Ridge Drive, Preston's model home. Starting bid $290,000. Hands went up. $295,000. $300,000. $305,000. I waited until the last moment, then raised my bidder card. $350,000. A ripple went through the crowd. Preston turned toward me, confusion flickering in his eyes. "You don't have that kind of money." "You're right," I said quietly, "but Oakline Development does." The gavel slammed. "Sold to Oakline Development LLC." Preston froze. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just waited as the next property came up, 218 Magnolia Ridge, then 222, then 230. By the end of the auction, Oakline Development owned 4 of the 6 homes in the undeveloped lot. The same man who once fined me for my mailbox color now answered to a corporation I controlled. That night I sat in my living room, papers spread across the coffee table, the glow of my laptop illuminating the next stage of the plan. Lydia's voice came through the speakerphone. "You realize you basically own a third of Magnolia Ridge now." "Not yet," I said, "but I'm getting close." She exhaled. "Jordan, what's the endgame here, revenge, justice?" "Both," I admitted. "He used rules to cage people like me. Now I'll use the law to free them and bury him in the process." But Preston wasn't done fighting. 3 days later, I received a certified envelope. Inside, a cease and desist order. Filed by Whitmore Realty, which still existed on paper, claiming my purchases constituted targeted harassment and malicious interference. I showed it to Lydia. She chuckled. "He really doesn't get it. This isn't harassment, it's capitalism." Still, she filed a counter-notice the same day, a request for forensic audit of all HOA and personal accounts linked to Whitmore Realty. By filing it publicly, she ensured one thing: the local press saw everything. The next week, Denver Daily ran the headline. "Former HOA President accused of misusing community funds for personal real estate deals." The article quoted anonymous HOA residents, but I recognized Cheryl's phrasing, the same nervous secretary from the meetings. She flipped. The story spread fast. Within 48 hours, every homeowner in Magnolia Ridge had read it. Some were furious, others were scared. And then something I never expected happened. They started coming to me for help. The first was a couple, John and Marissa, early 40s, 2 kids, good people who'd always avoided me until now. They showed up at my door one evening holding a stack of HOA letters. We didn't know what was really happening," Marissa said. He fined us $800 for trimming the hedges too short. Can you look at this? I invited them in, scanned the paperwork, and saw it immediately, the same fake letterhead, same misspelled enforcement. Yeah, I said, these are invalid, you can ignore them. John frowned, so we don't owe this. You don't owe a penny. They exhaled in relief. That night, 3 more neighbors emailed me. By the weekend, a dozen. I wasn't just a homeowner anymore. I'd become their unofficial representative. Preston's empire was crumbling from both sides, legal and social. 2 weeks later, I held a community meeting at the park. No folding tables, no khakis, no power trip. Just lawn chairs, coffee, and open air. Magnolia Ridge doesn't need a tyrant, I said, projecting my voice to the 50-something faces watching. We need transparency. We need an association that protects people, not punishes them. Someone shouted, what about Whitmore? I smiled, he's still around, but not for long. Because that morning, Lydia had called with news that hit like thunder. The forensic audit had uncovered $480,000 in unaccounted HOA funds. Most of it routed through shell accounts and used to buy investment homes. Preston's signature was on every transfer. The state moved fast. Within days, the Attorney General's office announced a preliminary investigation into Whitmore Realty. Reporters swarmed Magnolia Ridge again. Preston's house, now one of mine, became the backdrop for every story. They called it the fall of Magnolia Ridge. And yet for me, it wasn't about headlines anymore. It was about something deeper, the quiet vindication of standing where I'd once been humiliated and realizing no one could take that from me again. 3 nights later, around 10:30 p.m., I was reviewing documents when my security camera pinged. Motion detected. I checked the feed. A man in a hoodie stood at the edge of my yard, staring up at the house. He didn't move for almost a full minute, then he turned and the porch light caught his face. Preston. I went to the door but didn't open it. He called out, voice slurred, desperate. You think you've won, you think they care about you, they'll turn on you the second they get what they want. I didn't answer. He laughed bitterly, you don't belong here, Miles, you never will. Then he staggered off into the dark. I watched through the window until his figure vanished beyond the oak tree. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. The man who once controlled everything now had nothing, not even the power to scare me. A week later, the official charges dropped. Fraud, embezzlement, harassment. The DA's office froze Preston's assets pending investigation. The same day, his personal home, the last one not yet foreclosed, went up for auction. Lydia called me, you want it. I hesitated, buying that might be too symbolic. She laughed, Jordan, the symbolism is the point. On December 28th, the gavel came down again. Sold to Oakline Development LLC. I signed the paperwork, handed over the check, and sat quietly in the courthouse hallway for a long time. Because in that moment the full circle hit me. The man who called me property value poison now lived in a rented condo 20 miles away, while I held the deed to his dream. That evening I walked through his former home. It was eerily empty, furniture gone, echoes in every room. In the office I found a framed photo on the floor, Preston shaking hands with some city official. Underneath it, a brass plate read, "For outstanding community leadership." I set the frame upright, then turned to leave. But before I did, I looked around one last time and whispered, "You led them all right straight to me." Back home, I stood on my porch watching the streetlights flicker. Magnolia Ridge was quiet again, peaceful. But this time it was my peace. And the funny thing about peace, once you've earned it, it doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like justice finally learned your name. I thought owning Magnolia Ridge meant the fight was over. Turns out, winning makes people angrier than losing ever did. Preston had vanished after the charges, at least publicly. His social media was gone, his phone disconnected, his company dissolved. For a month it was quiet, too quiet. Then one January morning, Lydia called with a tone that made my stomach tighten. "Jordan," she said, "you need to see this." She sent a link to the Denver Ledger. Headline: Former HOA President claims he was target of racial vendetta. Below it, Preston's photo, clean-shaven, sympathetic lighting, the look of a man rehearsing redemption. He'd done an interview from an undisclosed location. The article painted him as a victim. I tried to maintain standards. I was attacked for caring about property values. I was harassed, my family threatened, they destroyed my life because of lies. And then the dagger. I believe I was targeted because I refused to bow to certain political pressures. Lydia sighed, he's playing the race card backwards. He's trying to flip the script, I said. Exactly, he's rebranding himself as the martyr. The article ended with a promise. Preston Whitmore intends to file a defamation lawsuit seeking damages exceeding $2 million. I sat there for a long minute, the taste of bitter irony in my mouth. The same man who'd vandalized my garage, forged fines, and used HOA funds to buy homes, now painting himself as the victim. That week my inbox exploded. Reporters, angry neighbors, online trolls. Some messages were supportive, others less so. You think you're some kind of hero? You ruined a man's reputation for clout. You people always play the victim. The phrase "you people" again, always the same melody, just different lyrics. But this time I didn't react, I'd been through worse. Instead, I gathered everything, emails, threats, comments, and forwarded them to Lydia. She called me that evening. He's got someone funding him, she said. PR like this isn't free, someone powerful wants this story to flip. Who? Developers, maybe, city councilmen, anyone who's made money from HOA kickbacks. Her voice dropped lower. Jordan, you've rattled the wrong cages. A few nights later, I found out exactly how wrong. I was driving home from a late meeting when headlights appeared in my rearview mirror, too close, too fast. The car tailgated me for half a mile, then swerved beside me at a red light. The window rolled down. Inside, a man I didn't recognize smiled, lifted a camera and took a photo, then he sped off. By the time I got home, someone had already posted that photo online. The face of corruption, the man who destroyed a neighborhood. Preston's new narrative was working. The next morning, Lydia and I met at the courthouse cafe. We can sue him first, she said. Defamation countersuit, but that keeps you in the spotlight longer. Are you ready for that? I stirred my coffee, watching the swirl. If I don't fight back, he wins the narrative. If I do, they'll say I'm obsessed. She smiled faintly. Welcome to politics, Mr. Miles. That's when an older man in a gray suit approached our table. Excuse me, he said, offering a card. I'm Richard Kellerman, City Zoning Committee. Mind if I sit? Lydia glanced at me. Go ahead. He leaned in. Off the record, there's pressure from developers. They want Magnolia Ridge rezoned for commercial interest. Whitmore's mess slowed them down, but they're still circling. I frowned. Commercial, that's residential zoning. He nodded. It was, but if they get a vote through the city council, they can bulldoze the entire subdivision for a retail project. Lydia's eyes widened. That's why they're backing him. He's the scapegoat. They're using his victim story to stall your ownership while they buy influence. Kellerman lowered his voice. They think you'll fold under public pressure, don't. I didn't. That weekend, I held another community meeting, this time inside the largest of the houses Oakland had acquired. Word spread fast. Nearly 70 people showed up. I stood by the staircase, addressing the crowd. Magnolia Ridge is ours now, I said. Not a developer's playground, not a politician's project. Ours, but if we don't organize, they'll take it anyway. An older man in the back, Mr. Daniels, a retired veteran, spoke up. How do we stop them? By rebuilding what they destroyed, I said. A real HOA, transparent residentron, no Preston, no backdoor deals, no discrimination. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. We voted right then to form a new board, filed legally under state law. 7 members, 3 committees, 1 mission. Protect every homeowner, regardless of color, class, or creed. For the first time, Magnolia Ridge wasn't a symbol of exclusion. It was a rebirth. But Preston wasn't done. 3 days later, Lydia called again. Jordan, they've filed the defamation suit. I laughed quietly. Of course they did. Don't worry, she said. We'll counter. I already have the vandalism footage, the fake fines, the audit reports, everything. He's walking into his own trap. Still, when I read the complaint, I couldn't help but marvel at the audacity. They claimed I had waged a racially motivated vendetta, orchestrated a media smear, and defrauded the court through shell companies. All the same tricks Preston had pulled, now twisted against me. It wasn't about truth anymore, it was about noise. And noise is how power hides corruption. Court day arrived in late February. The hearing wasn't about guilt, just whether the defamation case had enough basis to proceed. Preston arrived flanked by 2 lawyers and a PR rep. He looked confident, smug again, as if this was his resurrection. I sat across the aisle, calm, steady, Lydia beside me. When the judge asked for preliminary statements, Preston's lawyer stood first. My client has been publicly defamed, his livelihood destroyed by unfounded accusations. Mr. Miles manipulated the press for personal gain, fabricating criminal allegations that have since proven unsubstantiated. Lydia Rose, Your Honor, all evidence was independently verified by state auditors and law enforcement. Mr. Whitmore is under active investigation for fraud and misuse of HOA funds. There is no defamation, only accountability. The lawyer smirked, yet the criminal case remains pending. Innocent until proven guilty, isn't that right? Lydia didn't blink. Then perhaps your client should stop posting conspiracy theories about my client online. The judge cleared his throat. Enough, I'll review the filings and issue a ruling. Gavel struck, recess. Preston walked past me, his cologne sharp, his smile sharper. You can't cancel a man who built this place, he murmured. I turned my head slightly. You didn't build it, you exploited it. His eyes flashed. You'll regret crossing me. But his voice cracked mid-sentence, a tremor of fear he couldn't hide. 2 days later, the ruling came. Defamation case dismissed. The judge cited insufficient evidence and ongoing criminal proceedings against the plaintiff. Preston's last power play had failed. Still, I didn't celebrate. I'd learned that every victory came with shadows. Because that same night, I got an anonymous text. Watch your office, they're coming for the records. I checked the cameras at Oakline's small downtown office. 2 men were outside trying to jimmy the lock. I hit the alarm remotely and called the police. By the time officers arrived, the men were gone, but one dropped his wallet. Inside was a business card, Whitmore Legal Defense Fund. He wasn't just desperate, he was reckless. Lydia pushed for a restraining order the next morning, and I agreed. But what she said next caught me off guard. Jordan, the DA's office wants you to testify. The audit evidence you gathered, it's the centerpiece of the case now. When? Next month, State v. Whitmore, fraud and embezzlement. It hit me like a jolt. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a witness, maybe the deciding one. The days leading up to trial felt strange. Magnolia Ridge had gone quiet again, but this time it wasn't fear, it was respect. Neighbors waved, kids played, even the air felt lighter. One evening, as I walked down the street, Mr. Daniels approached. Jordan, he said, I never said it before, but thank you for standing up. I smiled, we stood up together. He nodded, still took one man to start it. Sometimes that's all it takes, one person to break the pattern. Trial day came on a cold March morning. The courtroom buzzed with reporters. Preston sat at the defense table, pale and tense, his lawyers whispering furiously. The prosecutor called me first. I took the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and looked out at the crowd. Everything I'd been through, the fines, the slurs, the vandalism, flashed through my mind. The prosecutor began, Mr. Miles, can you explain how you discovered the financial discrepancies? I told them step by step, calm, precise, factual. Emails, transfers, bank ledgers. Every paper trail led back to one man. By the time I was done, Preston wouldn't meet my eyes. His lawyer tried to rattle me on cross-examination. You admit you had a personal grudge. I admit I wanted fairness, I said. He wanted power, there's a difference. The courtroom murmured. The judge banged his gavel, order. But I could see it in their faces, they knew. When I stepped down, I caught Lydia's subtle nod, we'd done it. The DA rested the next day. Preston's defense stumbled, floundered, contradicted itself. Then came the verdict, guilty on 3 counts. Fraud, misappropriation, and falsifying financial documents. Maximum penalty 10 years pending sentencing. Preston's head dropped into his hands. I should have felt joy, but what I felt was peace. Because justice isn't loud, it's silent, like exhaling after years of holding your breath. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mr. Miles, any comment? I paused at the top of the steps, snowflakes drifting around me. Magnolia Ridge taught me one thing, I said. You can't build community on hate, you can't protect value by destroying people. Eventually, truth catches up. They scribbled it down, but I didn't wait for questions. I walked to my car, the cold air biting my cheeks, feeling lighter than I had in years. Because for the first time, it wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving that doing the right thing could still win. Preston's trial ended on a Friday afternoon in late March. By Monday morning, Magnolia Ridge felt like a different planet. No HOA inspectors creeping through yards. No anonymous notes. No whispers. Just the sound of sprinklers and kids riding bikes past the same oak tree that once shaded my worst nights. The headline said it all. Former HOA President found guilty, faces up to 10 years. Neighbors left cookies on my porch. Some offered handshakes, others apologies disguised as small talk. Didn't realize it was that bad. Guess you were right all along. I smiled, nodded, accepted the kindness, but part of me stayed cautious. Victory has a strange gravity. It pulls out envy in the people who once cheered you. That week Lydia called. Sentencing is next Friday, she said. DA's recommending 5 to 7 years. You should be there. I will. Then she hesitated. There's one more thing. The state appointed you interim HOA trustee until the new board finalizes bylaws. You're technically in charge of everything. I laughed softly. So the guy who was fined for his mailbox now runs the entire neighborhood. Poetic justice, she said. But as soon as I hung up, the weight of it hit me. Justice is simple when you're fighting monsters. It's complicated when people start calling you sir. Our first official HOA Reborn meeting was held in the community center, the same place Preston once used for his compliance sessions. 73 homeowners showed up. The air buzzed with cautious optimism. I stood at the podium, microphone in hand. Magnolia Ridge has a chance to start over, I said. No hidden agendas, no discrimination, transparency, fairness, accountability. Applause. Then a voice cut through from the back, sharp, skeptical. Yeah, easy to say when you're the one in charge. Heads turned. It was Cara Benton, realtor, mid-30s, one of the new board members elected after Preston's downfall. She voted for me publicly but never liked me privately. She crossed her arms. Some of us think you're using this as payback, buying up properties, controlling votes, owning everything. Isn't that exactly what Preston did? The room went silent. I could feel dozens of eyes studying me, the same eyes that once judged, now measuring. I took a slow breath. The difference is I'm not hiding anything. Every dollar, every vote, every rule, all public record. You want the books, they're online right now. Cara tilted her head. Then prove it. Step down after the bylaws pass. Let someone else lead. A murmur spread. I nodded. Fair, I'll step down once this community can stand on its own. She smirked like she'd won a small battle. But I saw the calculation behind her smile, ambition wearing integrity as perfume. Days blurred into meetings, filings, repair approvals, budget spreadsheets. Power doesn't rest, it multiplies paperwork. I spent evenings walking the neighborhood, fixing fences, talking to residents. That's how I met Elias Gomez, a landscaper who'd been fined thousands under Preston's rule. He was now behind on his mortgage, thanks to those fake liens. I looked over his records. These fines were illegal. I'll make sure you get credit back. He looked at me, eyes wet. You don't owe me that. I owe this place that, I said. That night I realized something important. My fight had stopped being about Preston months ago. It was about everyone who'd been crushed quietly. Sentencing day came cloudy and cold. The courtroom was half full. Preston sat shackled, suit too big now, hair grayer than I remembered. When the judge asked if he wanted to speak, he stood. I didn't mean harm, he said, voice trembling. I built Magnolia Ridge from nothing. I kept order. Maybe I went too far, but I did it for the community. The judge didn't flinch. Mr. Whitmore, order built on discrimination isn't order, it's control. He sentenced Preston to 6 years, with parole review after 4. As deputies let him out, he looked back once, not angry, not pleading, just hollow. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The next week, local media called it the end of the Magnolia era. But endings are never tidy. Because the more power I held, the more cracks appeared. Cara Benton began whispering that Oakline development was a front. She claimed I'd planned everything to seize control from day one. One evening, during a board meeting, she slammed a file on the table. These are deeds. Jordan Oakline bought 4 properties for cash. Where'd the money come from? Private investors, I said. Who? Confidential partners. She leaned forward. See, that's how it starts. You hide one thing, then another. The irony was painful. I'd spent months tearing down Preston's secrecy, and now someone was painting me with the same brush. I looked around. Some faces nodded with her. Doubt grows faster than trust. That night, I drove through Magnolia Ridge in silence. The same streets that once felt like battlegrounds now looked fragile, beautiful, but breakable. I stopped under the oak tree, watching its branches sway against the moon. I remembered the spray paint, the fake fines, the cold stares. And I realized Cara wasn't wrong to question me. Because absolute control, even for good reasons, is still control. The next morning, I called an emergency board meeting. I'm transferring full management rights from Oakline to the new HOA, I said. No ownership overlap, no corporate loopholes, everything belongs to the residents now. Gasps, whispers, relief. Kara blinked, you're giving it all up. I smiled, I didn't fight to own Magnolia Ridge, I fought to free it. For the first time, she didn't argue. 3 months passed, the neighborhood thrived. New bylaws ratified, fair dues, community events, diversity everywhere. For the first time in its history, Magnolia Ridge wasn't divided, it was united. And then one humid June morning, a black sedan parked across from my house. A man in a suit stepped out mid-50s, confident, clipboard in hand. He introduced himself as Frank Holloway, state real estate trustee. Mr. Miles, he said, I've been appointed to liquidate remaining Whitmore Realty assets. There's an offer you'll want to see. He handed me a folder. Inside was a proposal from a large investment firm to buy all remaining lots and unused parcels in Magnolia Ridge for redevelopment. Price tag $12 million. It was more than I'd ever seen in my life. Holloway smiled. With your stake and reputation, you could walk away wealthy. No one would blame you. I stared at the number. It would pay off my sister's mortgage, my parents' hospital bills, fund scholarships, retire me forever. But it would also mean bulldozers where kids played. It would mean Preston's ghost winning through greed instead of hate. I closed the folder. Tell your clients Magnolia Ridge isn't for sale. He blinked. You sure? Offers like this don't come twice. I'm sure. When he drove off, I watched the taillights disappear, the color of temptation fading into the dark. That evening, Kara came to my door. I heard about the offer, she said. You turned down $12 million. Yeah. She looked at me for a long second, then quietly, I misjudged you. Most people do, I said with a small smile. We stood there under the porch light, the smell of rain in the air. Jordan, she said finally, Preston's gone. But if we're going to build something better, we need someone who remembers why it mattered. I'll help, I said, but no more titles, no more control. She nodded, deal. By late summer, Magnolia Ridge had transformed. New murals on fences, community gardens where Preston once banned flowers. Kids selling lemonade outside homes once marked by violation notices. Every corner whispered the same story. You can't kill what's built on truth. I walked those streets daily, not as the outcast anymore, not as the hero either. Just another neighbor with a lawn that didn't have to be perfect. Then one evening, I received a letter postmarked from Colorado State Correctional Facility. No return name, just a scrawled handwriting I recognized immediately. Preston. I hesitated before opening it. Inside, Jordan. They tell me you own Magnolia Ridge now. Maybe that's fair, maybe I deserve this. But I keep thinking if you tear down every fence, how do you know where home ends? Enjoy your peace, I never found mine. No apology, just reflection. I folded it carefully, set it in a drawer, and closed it. The past didn't need to vanish, it just needed to stay where it belonged behind me. That night I stood under the oak tree one last time. Wind rustled through its leaves like quiet applause. For the first time I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Because winning isn't owning the land. It's making sure nobody else has to fight the same war to live on it. It's strange how quiet peace can sound when you've earned it. 3 years passed since Preston's sentencing. Magnolia Ridge had become something no one thought possible, a neighborhood that actually felt like a community. The gardens bloomed. The park had a new mural of kids from every background holding hands under the oak tree. Even the HOA meetings, now just monthly potlucks, were filled with laughter instead of tension. I still lived in the same brick house on the corner, same oak tree, same driveway where it all started. But everything else had changed. People waved when I walked by. The same neighbors who once clutched their purses now offered pies and invitations, not out of guilt but gratitude. Magnolia Ridge had healed. And in some ways, so had I. That morning I was sitting on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise when a familiar voice called out. Mr. Miles. It was Kara Benton, now HOA President and surprisingly good at it. She handed me an envelope. You got mail from the state again, official looking. I smiled, hopefully not another fine. She laughed, then hesitated. Hey, we're doing a community time capsule next month. We'd love for you to speak. Me, I'm old news. She shook her head. No, you're the reason we have news worth telling. I watched her walk away, the morning light glinting off the badge on her clipboard, HOA President, embossed in bronze. For a moment, I saw a reflection of who I'd been years ago, someone learning that power isn't control, it's responsibility. When I opened the envelope, I saw a letterhead that froze me mid-breath. Colorado Department of Corrections. My stomach turned, Preston. The letter was brief. Mr. Miles, Preston Whitmore passed away in custody last week from a cardiac arrest. As per his will, a portion of his estate was designated to you. Enclosed is a contact number for the executor. I stared at the words until they blurred. Preston was gone. The man who tried to destroy me, whose hate had built the walls I'd spent years tearing down, was gone. And somehow, in death, he'd found a way to reach me one last time. 2 days later, I met with Sandra Whitmore, Preston's sister and executor, at a downtown law office. She was polite, distant, maybe embarrassed. Jordan, I'll be direct, she said, sliding a folder across the table. My brother didn't have much left, but before prison he set aside a trust, said if anything happened to him, the funds should go toward repairing what he broke. I frowned. How much? 240,000. I blinked. He left that to me. To Magnolia Ridge, technically. He named you as the administrator. Sandra stood, gathering her coat. For what it's worth, he never stopped talking about that neighborhood, said it was supposed to be perfect. Maybe he finally realized what perfect meant. And then she left. I sat there alone, staring at the trust document. Preston Whitmore, the same man who'd called me property value poison, had left me the seed to rebuild everything he'd poisoned. If that's not irony, I don't know what is. I used the trust money to create the Magnolia Initiative, a nonprofit for fair housing reform and HOA accountability. Lydia helped me file the paperwork. Kara and Elias joined the board. We built it from my garage, the same one that once had GO back spray painted across it. Now it held blueprints, posters, and a mission statement in bold letters. No one should lose their peace because of prejudice. The story spread. Channel 9 ran a follow-up segment. The neighborhood that fought back, how Magnolia Ridge became a model for change. Requests poured in. Other HOAs from across the state wanted our template: fair boards, transparent budgets, resident rights education. Within a year, 5 more neighborhoods adopted the Magnolia Charter. Within 2, there were 20. And every time a new community joined, I thought of that oak tree, and how roots spread quietly underground before the world notices the forest growing. But closure has a strange rhythm. Some days it hums soft and sweet. Other days it sneaks up like thunder. One autumn evening I was cleaning old files when I found Preston's second letter, the one from prison. I hadn't read past the first line. Something told me it was time. I unfolded it carefully. Jordan, when you stood up to me, I told myself you ruined everything I built. But now I see you fixed what I broke. Maybe that's what leadership really looks like, knowing when you were the problem. If this trust ever reaches you, don't waste it proving I was wrong. Use it proving you were right. They'll forget my name one day. Make sure they remember yours for the right reasons. Preston, I didn't know how to feel. Forgiveness is a strange thing. It doesn't erase the past, but it stops it from owning your future. I folded the letter, placed it in the frame beside my community charter, and whispered, "Rest easy, Preston. We both built something after all." 3 months later, I stood on the new community stage, microphone in hand, crowd cheering. The air was cool, the sunset painting the sky in gold and crimson. Behind me, the new Magnolia Ridge Community Center shimmered under string lights, built entirely with grant funds and that trust money. Kara introduced me. We wouldn't be standing here without the man who turned pain into purpose, Jordan Miles. Applause thundered. I took the mic, smiling softly. When I moved here, they called me a lot of names, I said. Property value poison, outsider, trouble, but the truth is we're all property value poison to someone. We all devalue something when we stop pretending and start being real. Laughter rippled through the crowd. I continued, what matters isn't who you were, it's what you build after they tried to bury you. Magnolia Ridge isn't perfect, but it's proof that hate only wins if you let it define you. People stood and cameras flashed and kids clapped. And in the back of the crowd, I could swear I saw a ghost of a man, arms crossed, khakis neat, faint smile on his face, nodding once before fading into the twilight. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat alone on the stage steps, listening to the crickets hum. Lydia walked up, setting 2 cups of coffee beside me. Never thought we'd end up here, huh? Neither did I said. She sipped quietly. You ever think about leaving, moving somewhere new? Sometimes, I admitted, but this place, it's part of me now, the good, the bad, all of it. She nodded, so what's next? I smiled, maybe nothing, maybe everything. She laughed, spoken like a man who finally found peace. A week later, Magnolia Ridge made national news again. Congress cited our HOA charter in a federal bill proposal for housing fairness reform. They called it the Magnolia Standard. Reporters called me the accidental architect of justice. But I didn't feel like an architect, I just felt free. On the first anniversary of Preston's passing, I planted a small plaque under the oak tree. No names, no speeches, just 6 words carved into the metal. What you plant, you live through. The wind rustled the branches above me, scattering golden leaves like blessings. For a moment I closed my eyes and felt the weight of everything lift. Because in the end, I didn't just outsmart Preston. I outgrew him. Epilogues 5 years later. A drone camera swoops over Magnolia Ridge, now a thriving, diverse community of families, gardens, and life. Children run through sprinklers, an elderly couple paints birdhouses. Kara, older now, laughs with new residents at a cookout. The camera pans to my house, the same brick home, now with solar panels and a small wooden sign above the mailbox. Miles' residence established in grace. Inside, my desk is cluttered with papers from the Magnolia Initiative, expansion plans, partnership requests, a note that reads, HUD Conference Guest Speaker Jordan Miles. I close the folder, glance at Preston's old letter framed on the wall, and smile. The screen fades to black. Then one final line appears. They called him property value poison. Turns out he was the cure.